So welcome everyone. And I'm so glad they remembered to take the plastic off or we'd be in trouble. And I thank you very much for your patience. Always the first night. There's a few little hiccups, but we're here and we're going. So we're very thankful. And there was certainly an unprecedented response to the meetings here in Hixson. Is that what it's called? Hixson, yeah. And it also is an indication that people are getting interested in their health. I think 2020 was very confronting to many people. In fact, I think everyone. 2021, I know in Australia there were some hospitals you could not go in unless you'd had the jab. And so people started to realise, hey, I've got to take control. There's also about this time happening, a lot of people are getting disillusioned with the medical system. I think that the majority of doctors are ethical. There's no doubt about that, but I do not believe the pharmaceutical company is ethical. And the fact is that we live in a body that was created by God to heal itself. It's an amazing process, and we don't doubt that it can't heal itself, because if we get a cut, and I'm sure we've all had cuts in our life, they heal. And they heal if you give that cut the right conditions. If you keep opening it and you get a bit of dirt and rub it in, especially a bit of cow manure and rub it, it's not going to heal very well, is it? Do you know, there's a lot of common sense there. And that same healing power that we see in a cut or a scrape is all through the human body. And as you'll see by the end of this series, everything we need, we have. It's already inside the body. It's just knowing how to access that, knowing how to unlock that. And before we begin, I'd like to go to my teacher, the greatest teacher this world has ever known, and ask for God's guidance. Father, thank you so much we are here. Thank you so much for this body. Give us wisdom, give us understanding. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Our body is made up of 100 trillion cells. And there's an old proverb, Proverb 14, verse 6, that says, knowledge is easy to him that understands. When you understand how the body heals, you begin to understand how it works. So working and healing basically come side by side. Understanding how the cells work, we begin to understand how the body heals. So let's go, and I'm going to go to what we call the central business district of the human body, which is the inside workings of the cell. So what I'm drawing here and what I'm talking about is you. So here is the cell. And we have 100 trillion cells, and 75 trillion basically work like I'm about to show you. And 25 trillion are red blood cells. And in our next lecture, where we talk about the immune system and how to boost the immune system, we're going to have a little bit more of a look at the red blood cells. But the 25 trillion we've drawn here. And the 25 trillion have a nucleus. In fact, it's like a veritable city in here. There's a whole lot of things that are happening in there. And we'll be going inside the cell a few times this week. And so if my first illustration you're just getting, by the end of the week, you'll know it. You might even be able to draw it yourself. So the glucose goes in, and the glucose is a breakdown from the food that we eat. And when it first goes in, it goes through a 20-step pathway. And these are like 20 little chemical reactions. And the end result of those 20 little chemical reactions is 2 units of energy. And that's why we eat, isn't it? Now remember, this is our brain cell, this is our eye cell, this is our ear cells, this is our pancreatic cell. So all the different functions of all of our cells basically run on glucose. The end result of this 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as a form of glucose, gets fed into the next section. And the next section is an 8-step pathway. This 8-step pathway is called the powerhouse of the cell because of its ability to deliver 36 units of energy. And you might comment, how come a 20-step pathway only gives us 2 units of energy and an 8-step pathway gives us 36? The difference is oxygen. What a difference oxygen makes. And we'll be looking at that in more detail as we go through the week. I think on Thursday, the misprint missed out respiratory. We're going to respiratory because it's in our respiratory organs that we pick up the oxygen. What a difference oxygen makes. Just a comment. How are you going to feel if your 75 trillion cells all have enough oxygen to get to the 8-step pathway? How are you going to feel? You're going to be jumping out of your skin with energy. And this is also the foundation of what we'll be looking at later in the week when we look at chronic fatigue syndrome. But what we're going to be looking at today in relationship to the inside workings of the cell is movement, because the title of this lecture is Activity is Life. Before I show you the effect of exercise in the cell, let me draw it up a little bit more. Inside the cell, there's something that looks like a little bunch of grapes, but actually they're little molecules of glucose. So when we eat glucose, it goes to the liver first, actually, and it sells, first of all, number 1, the glucose goes to the cell, which we've just looked at, going through the energy pathways. Number 2, it gets stored as glycogen, and that's what these are. Glycogen is a name given to quick-release glucose stores, already sitting in the muscle cell, and as you'll see in exercise, they are accessed. But we've also got basement stores. My daughter, she lives in Wisconsin, and I think everyone who lives in the northern states, they have basements. Is that right? Now, Emma has 7 children. And up in her kitchen cupboards, she's got her daily, weekly stores of lentils and raisins and all that. But when it runs out, she sends the children down to the basement, yeah? So that's almost like what our fat stores are. They're the basement stores. And a lot of Americans and Australians today, the figures show that even Australia has overtaken America. Did you know that? 63% of Australians are either overweight or obese. And we'll be addressing that. And so the third place that the glucose gets sent, if the glycogen stores are full, we've got enough here, it'll be stored as fat. So that's our basement stores. But what I want to show you how exercise effectively can unlock that door. And the research I look at, and I like to look at the research from many different angles, and we're finding today that many agree that there is one type of exercise that is more effective than any other type, and it's the high-intensity interval training. And as the name implies, the high-intensity interval training is intervals of high intensity and intervals of recovery. So let's do an assessment of this. So we've got high-intensity sections, we've got recovery sections, and we've got usually these done in a cycle. And the research is showing that 30 seconds. Dr. Doug McGuff, in his book, Body by Science, he actually looked at this to help his heart patients. So we'll be referring to what I'm showing you here in a few other lectures when we look at diabetes, when we look at exercise, but I'm laying a foundation on why activity is life. So what they found is that the 30 seconds was a nice average. And if you think 30 seconds isn't very long, try it. Try running for your life. And high intensity isn't a gentle jog, is it? High intensity is going very hard, very fast. You don't actually have to run. All you have to do is find a hill. And I went on a walk the day before yesterday to your gorge. And when you're walking back from the gorge, you don't have to run. You just have to walk fast and you're getting some high intensity. Most of the research on the high intensity has been done on exercise bikes. It's handy on an exercise bike, especially for people who are a little unstable on their feet, they can hold on. And for people who have hip, knee, ankle problems, there's not weight going on there. And so most of the research has been done on the exercise bike, where you can choose to cycle very, very fast and cycle slowly. My husband and I, we live in the mountains, well, probably more called hills, and we run up hills, walk down hills, run up hills, walk down hills. So our walking down the hill is our recovery time. Your recovery time is your indicator of your fitness. That's why when you start to implement this, and after what you hear tonight, I'm sure you're going to want to, when you start implementing this, note your recovery time because it's the indicator of your fitness. Your fitness is not determined by how hard and fast you can go, but how long you take to recover. And Al Sears, also called an exercise doctor, in his book Pace, he gives a story of a lady who did 7 seconds high intensity and had to have a 15-minute rest. Whew. Now, I tell you that story because not many people are quite that unfit. Now, the good news is, and by the way, PACE means progressive acceleration cardiopulmonary exertion. No, you don't have to repeat that. P is progressive. This is progressive. What you cannot do now, what you cannot do tomorrow, you will be able to do if you keep at it. Little by little, you'll find your fitness levels will increase. And remember, your fitness is determined by your recovery time. Recovery time meaning how quickly your heartbeat goes or it settles down, how quickly your breathing starts to settle down. That's your indicator. In fact, when you think, yeah, I could do another fast one, but that's when you're ready. Now, the lady that did 7 seconds high intensity and 15 minutes recovery, 3 days later, she got to 10 seconds high intensity and she got to 10 minutes recovery, getting better. That's why it's progressive. Rome wasn't built in a day. Little by little, you can build up to it, and your body actually copes better when you do it little by little. Doing it as you can cope, maybe pushing yourself just a little bit more every day. High intensity could be the rowing machine. High intensity could be leaping on the rebounder. High intensity could be push-ups. Anything that gets the heart rate up and the respiration increased, I guess, is considered high intensity. Swimming fast. Recovery time, they have discovered that recovery time is more effective if you are actually moving. So climbing up a hill, halfway up, you've done your 30 seconds, so you stop. So you'll stop, you might do some stretches, do some lunges, do some upper body, 10 down, 10 up, 10 back, 10 forward, something like that. So it's not as intense, but it's moving slowly. And of course, on the exercise bike, that can be just cycling slowly. And if you're on a rebounder, you can do the health bounce. This is the health bounce, just jigging up and down slowly. Done for a cycle of 6. Now, there are many exciting things about the high-intensity interval training, and this is one of them. Have you done the maths on that? I'm not a great mathematician, and I'm going to be a little bit generous here. 15 minutes. So sorry, to say you've got no time is no excuse, because everyone has 15 minutes. If you think you don't have 15 minutes, it's time to assess your day. What do you do with your time? And you know, the king on his throne and the pauper in the streets, in the poorer streets of town, they got the same amount of time. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it says, to everything there is a season and a time. For every purpose under heaven, there is a time for you to exercise. So sorry, no excuses taken here. You just got to find out where you can fit it into your day. It was probably about 18 years ago now. I still had a few teenagers at home. So mornings were busy, put the wash on, get the breakfast going, get the kids up, etc., etc. I went to New Zealand giving a series of health lectures, and the lady I stayed with, she said, I do a 5-kilometre walk every day. Would you like to join me? And I said, I'd love to. Don't have to get the kids up, put the washing on, put the breakfast on, etc., etc. She was twice my size, 10 years younger than me. Halfway through the walk, I couldn't keep up with her. It was a little bit embarrassing because I'm the health teacher. You see, I didn't think I needed to exercise because I'm always busy, running here, running there, going up here, going down there. I thought, I'm right. But this walk showed me I was not right. The next day, she said, are you coming? I said, sure. When I got out of bed, oh dear, was I sore. Now, she had another lady with her that day, and I'm glad because I just... She said, how are you going? I said, fine. Oh, I learnt my lesson. Do you know, there's an interesting verse in the Bible. It's found in Exodus 15, chapter 26. It says, if you will diligently hearken or listen, an old word for listen, if you will diligently hearken or listen to the voice of the Lord thy God in your body. And you know what I said to my body? I'm hearing you. That's what I said, I'm hearing you. So when I went home, by then the pain had eased. I thought, I've got to find a spot in my day where I'll put my exercise. What I had to do was go to bed a little earlier, get up a little earlier, because I still had to put the wash on and get the kids up and put the breakfast on, etc., etc. It's all about planning your day. Because remember, there is a time for every purpose under heaven. And I had to find a time to exercise because I don't believe that I should be teaching or speaking on such subjects unless I do it. Would you go to a painter to paint your house if the paint's falling off his house? Would you go to the plumber if his house has got the guttering falling everywhere? No. So I began to implement it. Had to get up early, had to walk in the dark. I used to always get cold feet. I was always getting cold feet. And I came to the misconception that that was just me. No. Perfect health requires perfect circulation, and perfect circulation means our whole body is always warm. And if it's not, you've got to do something about it. Within 2 weeks, I no longer had cold feet. In fact, it took a few months for me to realise I'm not sitting on the ensuite with my feet in the basin anymore trying to warm them up. And I would leave home with the scarf, the hat, the gloves, come home, throw the gloves off. Dear, it's hot in this house. And my friend, Dr. Jonathan Gibbs, he's got 3 PhDs, and one is the effect of exercise on the cell. And he happened to be there when I was talking about this. He said, let me tell you what's happening in your body, Barbara. He said, a network of capillaries has been opened that equals distance around planet Earth. Whoa. That's all the little capillaries in my toes, in my hands, in my brain, in my eyes, in my ears. Many people today are not really living, they're just existing. Is that right? They're alive, but they're not jumping out of their skin with energy. They're just existing. What I'm very happy to Dr. Doug McGuff for is he takes you inside the cell and shows why this is such a powerful form of exercise. So let's have a look at this. When the person is getting to the end of their first session of high-intensity interval training, the 20-step pathway speeds up. The 8-step pathway speeds up. Now, that's not a surprise, is it? But this 20-step pathway is very fast. It's moving. This 8-step pathway is a lot slower. And what happens when both of these pathways speed up? There's a rate-setting enzyme in there that will always keep this one slower and this one faster. So when these cycles are really moving, more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into the 8-step. So what the body does is it stores it as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid? I'm sure we've all experienced lactic acid. So this is no surprise, and this is why. But what I think is one of the most exciting things about this form of exercise is that when you're in recovery time, cycling slowly, stretching, getting your breath back, maybe on the health bounce on the rebound, when you're in recovery time, the liver converts the lactic acid back to pyruvate. Do you know what this means? This means that when you're in recovery time, you're burning just as much fuel as when you're running for your life. And what this means is that when you're in recovery time, your lactic acid is being all mopped up. What an amazing body we live in. You look at children in the playground. Notice they're not jogging. They're either running for their life or stopping. Is that right? Yeah. I raised 8 children. I've got 23 grandchildren. I see it all the time. When I was a little girl, we used to play hopscotch. When it's my turn, I'm doing high intensity. And then I come back and then it's someone else's turn. Skipping rope. I taught in the Bronx a few years ago. Whoa, can they skip? 2 ropes together and they're just going like this. They said, do you want to go? I said, I'll watch. There's your high intensity. When it's your turn, your high intensity, the soccer field, the basketball court, sessions of high intensity and recovery. Let's go to the African plains. No animal jogs. They're either running for their life or they're stopping. And now science is showing that this is the most effective form of exercise. But it gets better. What I've just shown you is pretty good. So we're getting to the end of the second 30 seconds high intensity. It's morning because it's the best time to do it. Because if you do it after breakfast, a lot of the energy is going to digestion. But if you can do it first thing in the morning, all your body's energies can go to your muscles for the exercise. And there's no need to eat, but you do need to drink. You need to drink water because it'll unlock your stores, because we've got some amazing stores. So getting to the end of the second set of 30 seconds high intensity, glycogen stores are being plucked. And it's an amazing process because they're little molecules of glucose already in your muscle cell, waiting to be plucked and put through the pathway, plucked, put through the pathway. We're running out of glycogen stores, especially by the third set. So we're running out of fuel. So what the brain now does is it causes a release from the pituitary gland of the human growth hormone. The human growth hormone is active when we're growing. Probably doesn't surprise you to know that I stopped growing at 16. My son William, he grew 2 inches from 19 to 22. Boys can be growing a lot later. The human growth hormone, once we stop growing, goes basically into retirement. But some people are very busy in their retirement, is that right? So the human growth hormone, remember, it's released because what are we running out? We're running out of fuel. We're running out of our glycogen stores. And so the human growth hormone, because the brain's saying, we need more fuel. So the human growth hormone's released and it activates hormone-sensitive lipase. So what's hormone-sensitive lipase? Hormone-sensitive lipase is the enzyme that unlocks the basement stores. So hormone-sensitive lipase is an enzyme that breaks down fat. It's released to start releasing the fat stores. The human growth hormone stops burning glucose as fuel and becomes a fat burner. Why? Glucose burns at 4 calories per gram, whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. And every weight loss book has this in psychedelic colours, but actually they don't know what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. And if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? That. It's a bit hard to say because we've been also brainwashed against it. But we'll look at that in another lecture. No wonder the human growth hormone causes the body to start burning as fat as fuel because we're moving. We're moving and we're moving fast. We need a high octane fuel here. The human growth hormone also increases the body's ability to utilize protein. This week we'll look at the importance of eating adequate protein. We'll look at the importance of the types of protein. We'll look at the importance of not drinking a lot with your meal so you're not washing away the enzymes that break down our protein. Now we're looking at another aspect, and that is implementing this high-intensity interval training every day will increase our body's ability to utilize protein. Our body cannot function without protein. Our body cannot heal without protein. There's more. The human growth hormone causes the circulation of the blood to increase to the skin. This explains why I didn't get any more cold feet down to the extremities, to the skin. This explains why the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for the human growth hormone. Did you know that? I'm offering it to you cut price today. 15 minutes high-intensity interval training a day will cause a release of the human growth hormone, and that will remain active for 24 hours. What a bargain. One of the first things I said to you tonight was that inside our body is everything we need. We just need to know how to access it, how to unlock it. And I've got some good news. Muscle knows no age. You know what that means? Whether you're 9 or 90, you can have strong muscles. Now, if you're questioning this, it's time for you to watch the documentary I watched on the plane a little while ago on 100-year-old athletes. Got that? Now, they're not running as fast as the 20-year-olds, but they're athletes. Their body is moving. Activity is life. And you can see by what I've shown you here that you will receive more energy than you expend on your morning walk, on your morning, it's walking if you're going up a hill, on your morning exercise, because have you noticed how your breathing changes? Your breathing changes very, very much. And because it changes, you're getting more oxygen going in. As we're standing here, we're breathing in 500 mil, breathing out 500 mil. Sorry, I'm Australian, we do mil. When you get to the end of your 30-second, you're breathing in 3,600 mil and you're breathing out 3,600 mil. What a change. But in Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says that God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils. Where did he breathe? Nostrils. That's where we must breathe when we're exercising. If you breathe in and out through your nostrils, you will get 18% more oxygen at the cellular level. 18% more. That's impressive. I was talking to a lady last week. She said, Barbara, I've tried it and I can't. I said, I know. I couldn't at first either, but I've trained myself. I've trained myself only to breathe through the nose. Why? Why should you only breathe through your nose when you're exercising? Nose purifies the air, warms the air, humidifies the air, balances blood gases, and also pressurizes the air ready for the lungs. So let's go back to balances blood gases. What are the blood gases? There's 3 blood gases particularly that it balances. One is oxygen. That's not a surprise. But how it balances oxygen, especially at the cellular level, is carbon dioxide. And the third, which we'll look at more detail in another lecture, is nitric oxide. Mouth breathers aren't getting nitric oxide because nitric oxide is only released in the sinus. So particularly, they're the 3 gases that are balanced by nose breathing. When we look at respiratory, we'll look at this in more detail too. But when you breathe in, by the way, we've got 25 trillion red blood cells and they carry something called hemoglobin, 270 hemoglobin on the red blood cell. And they have 4 docking sites for oxygen. But let me show you what happens. For 4 molecules of oxygen to be picked up in the lungs, there must be 4 molecules of carbon dioxide. When there's 4 molecules of carbon dioxide, then 4 molecules of oxygen can be picked up. It's an exchange. It's an exchange. If you're breathing out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. And maybe there's 4 molecules of oxygen there, but there's only 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. So only 2 molecules of oxygen can be picked up. And then when we get to the cell wall, for 4 molecules of oxygen to be picked up, there must be 4 molecules of carbon dioxide. It's an exchange. And what they've discovered, that in exercise, the muscles that are using or being used the most pick up the most oxygen. You know why? Because they're the ones that are giving off most of the carbon dioxide, because there's an exchange. So yes, they always said breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Is that right? Is that what we've all been told? Change now. The more they discover about the human body, it's incredible. It might be hard, and if you're not used to it, and tomorrow morning you go to exercise because you're going to want to when you hear how amazing it is, and you're going to want this brain to be sparky for classes tomorrow. And if you feel like you're dying when you get to the top of the hill because you're nose breathing, you can take a little bit in through your mouth. But you actually don't get it at the cellular level. And that's where we need it, because that's where we're getting our energy. It seems impossible at first. If you're an athlete, if you're used to going hard and fast, tomorrow morning you're going to say, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Keep trying, because we have an amazing brain that can be rewired. And you can be rewiring your brain right up until the day you die. So I can testify that you can do it. So when I was in last year, I was walking up in Rocky Mountain National Park, 12,000 feet. There were these 2 young men with me, and they'd heard my lectures, and we're doing it. Keeping that mouth closed, keeping it closed. And every now and then they'd look around and, yeah, I'm still there. And you know what we found? That the more you went, the more energy you have from the nose breathing, because you're getting more oxygen where you need it in the cell. Because when that cell has enough oxygen, it gives 36 units of energy compared to the cell that doesn't have the oxygen. So nose breathing. So God knew what he was saying when the Bible was written, and he breathed into, when he formed man from the dust of the ground, he breathed into his nostrils, not his mouth. because nose breathing will give you more oxygen, and more oxygen means more energy. I hope I didn't lose you, but it's my aim to explain to you this. Why? Knowledge is easy to him that understands. And if I've only just got you because I know I've gone pretty deep into the cell, we're going to go there nearly every lecture. And you'll be looking at it going, oh, that again. Yeah, we know that. The inside workings of the cell. We had a fourth-year med student attend our program. And he said, this is fascinating. We learn all this, but I didn't quite know how to apply it to health. And so he said, I learned more this week in these lectures on the inside workings of the cell. You see, this is the glycolytic pathway. This is the mitochondrion, the Krebs cycle. Yes, I'll go back to speaking English now. But for people who know the science behind it, they're the pathways. Well, it's time for us to have a break now. So we're going to have a break. Maybe stand up, have a stretch, have some water, and when we come back, we're going to have a look at how you can boost your immune system